Hi, beautiful souls. It's Tan back here again today with you on this astrology, human design, and gene keys channel. And today I'm here with Adriana Felix, who is an astrologer at Tan Astrology on the Tan Astrology team. And Adriana is also currently a Master's of Psychology student. She's based in Porto in Portugal, and she's doing both astrology and psychology. And therefore, today we thought it would be super interesting to talk about astropsychology. Yes. So, Adriana, the audience, the people in this community that are watching are probably already wondering, like, what is astropsychology? So, could you tell us what is the definition of that?
So, as the name clearly says, is about combining both astrology and psychology. So it's like a mixture of the scientific look from psychology regarding human experiences and feelings, and then with the astrological point of view, which just goes into the energies and what kind of outside influences are coming from the planets and the luminaires. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that when you combine these two together, you kind of have the personality or the psychology, the mind, the psyche, maybe combined with like energies and other factors that are influencing from the stars, you can say.
Yeah, I think it gives you a fuller view of yourself, because psychology is very it's mental, but it's organic. It's about the human experience, our day-to-day lives, and how we, go about our days. And it also is very concentrated in psychological issues. But astrology just, gives you a reading on purpose, life purpose, and on everything, not only issues, just, the way you are, because psychology also looks at personality, but it's to evaluate your behaviors. Meanwhile, astrology can give you an overview of the things that are influencing you and the things that you can put out there in the world. So, combination.
Right. And so why do you feel like it is like important to combine the two? Why is it like, I don't know, maybe not useful enough to just do psychology alone, or not useful enough to just do astrology alone? What's the benefit of combining them?
So, psychology has its barriers. When you're studying psychology, you will often face some walls. And this is because I'm going to give you an example. If we look at victim patterns, we know they exist, but in psychology, we can't really explain them because, you have a victim case, and, that victim might be involved in a toxic relationship, and she breaks up with that person and goes away to a different city. And all of a sudden, this victim enters a new toxic relationship, and a victim relationship. How does that happen? We know that those patterns happen, and we know that if you're a victim once, it's very likely that you be a victim twice or many other times. But there's no explanation to that. So that's when we stop. We just agree that it happens, but we don't have explanations for that. And astrology can provide you with, the energy surrounding you, the things that you need to heal, and how you can protect your energy. Of course, this is hard to speak on, because I'm not saying that that the victim has a fault here, like she needs to do something not to fall in victim. But at least in astrology, you get a broad sense of things and a meaning attribute to things. Yeah, I think that's the main point.
Okay, so what you're saying is that like you can get a more profound meaning behind why somebody might do something, a more soul level explanation or understanding of why something might happen again as a pattern like that.
Yes, I can agree with that, because in psychology it's very medical. It's always a kind of medical approach, and we as humans, we are very complex, and when you deal with the mind, it's hard to predict how someone is going to respond. So astrology is more flexible in that sense, and yeah, I think it gives you an inside and out point of view. I can validate the things that are happening in your life. So the thing with combining psychology and astrology is that you can't bring astrology into the consultation. As a psychologist, I'm not going to tell you like, oh, well, let me see your birth date and we'll check the energies, right? So we need to bring a little bit of the astrological knowledge to the psychologist in a way that, mainly from the client perspective, like I have this natal chart and I have these energies that I feel like I'm dealing. And as a good psychology, you should hold space for that. But if you have the knowledge to understand those energies, you can work with the person and maintain a ethical approach. So it's hard, but it's possible, and it's a very complete point of view well, not point of view, but a really big space for the person to understand what's happening and what they might be feeling.
So what's the barrier there? Like, why is it not possible to bring astrology into like a psychology session?
Well, so psychology is a scientific approach, and being so, it's necessary, because if it weren't for the scientific approach, we couldn't validate mental issues. So we need that science backing us up, to be in hospitals, and we need that structure to operate on the world.
So why does the scientific community recognize psychology and the observations and experiments in psychology?
And mostly because of behavior, but that was our way in, because as psychologists we look at behavior, and behavior is something that you can clearly measure, but not so clearly. So I have this quote that I wanted to bring up from John Watson. So psychology started, there's a theory in psychology that just looks at behavior, and it started with Pavlov's dog, that it rang the bell and the dog started to salivate. So that was the beginning of a psychology approach, and that's behaviorism. And John Watson was a behaviorist, and he told that he said that, well, bring me a dozen sane kids, healthy kids, and regardless of their tendencies, their gifts, I can turn them into whatever I want, like a lawyer, a doctor, or even a thief. And the thing is, it's not true. You can, control someone's environment and really try to put someone on a path, but the person will not follow it if it's not meant for him.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a gap there. Why is this happening that we can't, if you control outside environment and the context of a person, why can't we assure that someone is going to be a doctor or a thief?
Mm-hmm.
So there's something of an innate nature that is happening. And as psychology, we recognize those innate things, but not quite, because at the same time, that's recognizing a soul, because it's very inexplicable to have, a purpose in life. That
right. So to say that, psychology is based on a scientific method, then it's not entirely accurate then, because science most of the time tends to be pretty much, A plus B equals C, or kind of that's just it turns out that way. It's predictable in a sense. But psychology is not that way. So to accept it as just from the science is not necessarily or entirely a great place to begin or to start.
Yeah, and there are some people in the community that say that psychology is going to end, that we're going to find an algorithm to target with depression. We know the symptoms, we know how to cure them based on other people's experiences. And so this is how we're going to treat people with a coding with AI. And that's just that's not possible. We as humans, we need empathy, and that's another thing that it's not explained by science. So even for psychology is a little bit, it's a wild environment to survive.
Yeah. So if you were to be able to bring, astrology into a psychological practice, what do you think? How would you do that? Like, what do they have in common that you can merge them or bring them together?
So they're both trying to figure out how we function, and they have a common goal, which is helping people with that. And also to empower people. So there was a battle between two psychologists that had this very different approach of helping people. So you had the scientific side and the spiritual side. Okay. I'm going to tell you a little story about Freud and Carl Jung.
Right.
So they formed a relationship. The first time they talked for 13 hours straight. So imagine that. They were very enthusiastic about psychology. And this was the beginning of psychology. Remember that Freud is the father of psychology, unfortunately, because he discovered the unconscious, that there were things in the back of our mind that we couldn't reach.
And that's a very important discovery as well.
It is. It's why we have psychology, because there's a knowledge of the mind. People just didn't think about thinking. So it was a very innovative thought. So he uncovers the unconscious,
right?
And Freud, and he starts exploring it. And Carl Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist, and they came together to talk about how the mind works and what's the product of mind, and how can we figure out how to manage that in a sense. So psychology, really the birth of psychology. So Freud started using hypnosis, and so Carl Jung started experimenting with hypnosis. let me tell you, this was a really close relationship. Freud called Carl Jung like a son to him. So they were very tight. But when they start hypnosis, Freud was just accessing the things on our daily lives and human lives, like repressed memories and trauma, and accessing that and relating to early stages of life, so early experiences, and through a very sexual scope. Meanwhile, Jung reached something in hypnosis called the unconscious collective. So it went really deep on the hypnosis and found past lives. So this is not something that doesn't happen anymore. This still happens. And we have the Dolores Cannon example of this. So Freud was really upset about these findings. Like, what the heck? That's simply not true. And the thing is, you're going away from science. We're trying to make this scientific, and you're just messing it up, bringing spirituality into this.
So he was saying that to Carl Jung.
Yeah. And so this was a very messy breakup because they were very close. But at the same time, if this breakup didn't exist, we wouldn't have psychology. I would argue that. But they do have some things in common. And it's like we have the same theory, but in one, we're just looking at the surface, and Jung brings the other side of things. So I'm going to show you something that is an illustration on Freud's point of view of the mind. And then I'm going to try to relate it to astrology from someone I met in this book. This is a French book on astrology and health, and I'm going to try to explore that with you. Let me just share my screen. So this was Freud's biggest finding. We have the conscious mind, which is like I'm thinking, I'm speaking right now, and I'm articulating, and things are very conscious because I'm accessing things, right?
Yeah.
And then on the subconscious, we have the memories, and this knowledge can be like brushing your teeth. You don't think of brushing your teeth. You just access that. That's ingrained. But it doesn't need to be conscious. You can be brushing your teeth and watching the news or doing whatever.
Okay.
But as you go deeper, you have values. You have, things that were really ingrained in you from your experiences, from your relationships.
And then things that you can kind of just bring up when you need to. You can kind of make it conscious easily if you need it to. But it's kind of like there.
Exactly. So what Freud was trying to reach was this last point, which is the deepest point. And that's where Jung went too deep, found something, way more interesting. So the idea, it's referring to our basic needs and really, our deepest needs and pulsions. He referred to them as pulsions. And so these were kind of, if you imagine these superego and ego being people, they were like, whoa, calm down. Let's see what can go above, and let's see what we can bring to the conscious and into life, because we want to live with other people, and we live in society, and we're not going to bring our sexual desires and shameful things into our day-to-day life, right? So
Is
they
there a
are like,
reason why he called the conscious the ego? Because from our, like, most people's understanding of the ego, it is something different from what he's trying to say here, right?
yeah, so it's not what you have in a spiritual knowledge being ego. I just think the names came from just common knowledge. He wanted to explain using words that were understandable.
Okay.
So yeah, this was his approach on the mind. And Jung went a little bit deeper and read other lives. But you can see that, you know, Freud goes back into early stages of life, but Jung goes back into past lives. So if they came together, that would be perfect, because, you know, you're integrating what you have from past lives with the things that you lived through your early age. And now you have all these tools at your favor in helping you solving your questions and finding your purpose in life, and healing so much better, because you have all of this information and validation, and you can make sense of things. And if you use psychology, you can do this in a very controlled environment and with very specific tools, because with spirituality, sometimes we get off the ground and it's hard to come down. And living in human bodies and living with human minds, that's a struggle, because we're spiritual beings and this vessel is really limited.
Yeah.
That's why we try to speak things, but a lot of things happen to our body. Like we can hold fat, we can hold diseases, we can manifest pains, we can manifest like mannerisms. A lot can happen because we're constantly having things coming through us. So psychology is important to really hold yourself to the ground. And okay, you're a spiritual being, but now you're on earth and you need to deal with these mental structures and hold the spiritual knowledge and make sense of things in a very practical way.
I'm also wondering here, because, like, you know, this is like Freud's iceberg has been created. What year did he create this? Do you know?
I think in the early 20, in the early 20s.
Right. Yeah. Because, like, we do see a shift, you know, in the collective, in humanity, in society, with regards to, you know, sexual desires, and even sometimes like shameful experiences, and even especially in the spiritual community in the modern day and age, that these things are becoming something that it's not so deep, you know, in the unconscious, as it used to be in the past. It's sort of now something that, you know, people are kind of wanting to bring into values, morals, or maybe even just kind of like everyday perceptions and things. So yeah, but we can definitely go into like the more modern aspects of psychology later on. But like, so how would you link this to astrology then? Is there some kind of overlap between them?
Yeah, let me just tell you that Freud made a mess regarding sexuality. So just let's stick to this because he was very focused on penetration, and you know, it didn't acknowledge the clitoris. So it failed us on that point, but his contribution was essential. That's why we talk about him.
Yeah.
So combining this with astrology,
okay.
We have this proposition from this book and this author, Sylvie's, and she attributes to the conscious mind the sun, the ascendant ruler, Mercury, Venus, and Moon. So yeah, we can disagree on Moon, but her point of
definitely.
Her point of view, it's like it's what you deal more often. You have to be and feel to react. So it's immediate. That's why she brings moon into this conscious space. On the
Yeah, I have to
subconscious,
definitely disagree that the moon is not conscious, but yet it does happen like very instantly. But
yeah,
things can happen instantly that are unconscious or that we don't know that they're happening, but they're still happening inside of us as well. But yeah, go on.
I love talking about the moon because it's so close to us. It
Mm.
impacts us in a very superficial way, but at the same time in a very deep way. So it's it's a very interesting luminary.
Yeah, maybe the moon is even just like going up and down, kind of like
Yeah.
conscious, unconscious, subconscious is kind of going like that.
Yep.
Yeah, because it moves so fast. Interesting. Yeah.
So remember how I was saying that if this was a person, it would be monitoring or police what we can bring up to life.
Yeah.
So she attributes Saturn as the police. Like what comes, okay, there's all of this energy that wants to come up, but then Saturn, it's like, are you going to be accepted?
Okay.
Are you
Wow.
going to be
Interesting.
judged? Don't make a mess of yourself. So I think Saturn really fits into this subconscious
Right.
area.
And with those rings around Saturn, kind of putting everybody in their place, right?
Yeah. And then in the unconscious, and as I was saying in the pulses, that's what Freud called the wants of that, those shameful wants and needs were of eros and thanatos.
Mm.
These are Latin words for life and death pulses. So of course it relates to Pluto, Mars, and then Uranus. She argues that it emphasizes those energies from Pluto and Mars.
Okay.
So it's a start, and it's an interesting perspective, and it's very it relies also in the house placements. So she brings this idea, but she also gives a lot of importance, yes, to the house placements.
Right.
So
So I'm wondering I have two questions. The first question is with Mars, and how we discussed that the sexual urges and things like that in the modern day are now not as deep and unconscious as before. Could that be the reason why, like, I think a lot of the viewers watching wouldn't really associate Mars with the unconscious, but more so with something else? Just it's not that deep inside of us. That could be one of the reasons. Do you think so, or?
So Mars is here because of the aggression side.
Mm-hmm.
And aggression, we can't show aggression all the time. We have to hide it and keep it below conscious, because if it's always conscious, there's going to be an issue. That's why it's here. But Mars, it's also our energy and our, our drive. I was saying our drive.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would put this I would change everything into a more fluid approach.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I really can understand this point of view. It's recent, but not so recent.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's something to take into account, but not take like
Right.
very
Yeah.
serious.
Yeah. It's a start to where this could go. So I guess the other question I have is, where is Neptune?
She doesn't.
Yeah. Why not?
I'm not sure. She doesn't
Interesting.
mention.
Where would you put it?
I was going to ask you that. Probably somewhere between the unconscious and the subconscious.
Yeah, I would think so too.
Because it relates to dreams. So dreams are it's the unconscious coming alive, And that was another thing for Freud. He loved dreams. He like his theory was all about dream interpretation. So um, so regarding Neptune, I think being in the dream realm, it's unconscious, but at the same time, because it's our hopes and what we want to bring in the world, I would put it here with Saturn, because we tend to bring those energies of Neptune into actions. So we dream, but we help people with actions, with voice, with so somewhere in between this.
Right. I think it's so interesting. Like you can even look at this as aspects between planets and how the planets might even be pulling each other. Like, for example, if you have like Mercury with Pluto, you're kind of pulling a present conscious part of yourself to maybe understand and dig deeper into the unconscious. So that's interesting if we look at it like that in astrology. Yeah. Cool. And so this is definitely like super interesting and like definitely one way of looking at it. And do you have any other ways of overlapping astrology and psychology, maybe based on Carl Jung or any other modern theories?
Yes, I think so. So I was going to say sim in Portuguese.
Okay, see?
Yes, sim is yes. Because I'm thinking, and so
Yeah.
just go say yes, say sim. So let me just. So in psychology now, we have two main approaches. We have the cognitive behavioral therapy, which is more focused on the practicality of psychology and getting people to behave different. So it's a more external consideration of psychology. And then we have humanistic approaches, which are the ones that consider your experience and consider your context, your beliefs, your belief system. So it's a little bit more open-minded. So there's definitely a space, even if it's not astrology, if you're religious, this kind of approach can integrate your religious beliefs. And we have to integrate beliefs into the consultation, because it's how the person functions, right? And the humanistic approach, we have a big name, which is Carl Rogers, which developed the person-centered.
Okay.
So it's all about the client.
Okay.
It's all about the person, what and its point of view. So its point of view. So if I see pain in some situation, and if my psychologist doesn't recognize that being a source of pain, that would be acting like an expert, like you shouldn't be feeling pain from this, right? So, and then I put a diagnosis on it, but from a more Rogerian approach, it's like it's validated. Your feelings are validated. So your feelings, your religion, sometimes we don't like certain things in religion, but we have to embrace it because it's the person reality. And we have to see if that is going to be detrimental or if we can work with it to improve someone's mental health.
So the humanistic approach is basically saying that whatever you feel is valid and whatever you feel is your truth or is your life. Okay. How does that link with astrology? Does it, or it doesn't have the same kind of overlay that Freud's theory has with astrology?
So the only way you can really explore astrology and overlay it is when you have this humanistic approach.
Okay.
Right? Because it's what the person believes.
Right.
And what the person feels. If you go to a psychologist, and this can be like an advice. Just if you like astrology and it makes sense to you, and you want to improve yourself by going to the psychologist, maybe don't choose someone with a very cognitive behavioral approach, because it's going to be very practical. Like if you're having depression, you're gonna have to do some tasks, and it considers your experiences but not so much. And you're gonna have the diagnosis. And in humanistic approach, that's not so relevant to have a diagnosis. And in astrology, that's the thing. We know that energy is dualistic. So you can have that expression of Venus or that aspect manifest in a way or another, or in a fluent way. And yeah, I think that's...
You're saying that astrology, the approach of doing a birth chart reading, is already very similar to the humanistic approach.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I love it. I would even say that like astrology could even be a prevention tool. Like if you use it correctly, it could be a nice prevention tool for your mind, going into negative thinking patterns or anything like that. If you use it in a nice way with like a nice astrologer who's like helping you there. And so yeah, I think that's
exactly. So we are born with this. They're ingrained in. So we are born with these emotions. If you're not helping a kid expressing and understanding their emotions, is most certainly going to develop some kind of issue later in life.
Yeah. And
that's why early intervention is so important, and having positive education. You're totally right about that.
Or incorporating some spirituality into the education.
That would be perfect.
Cool. All right. So yeah, are we going to be following up with some more videos in this astropsychology series, Adriana?
I mean, I hope so, to explore some of the planetary influences and even issues.
Yeah, and just kind of looking at the more psychological interpretations of planetary influences in the planets, and maybe looking at the astrological approach or explanations to something related to psychology as well.
Yeah, just bringing that holistic perspective.
Cool. So thank you, Adriana, for today. And you guys are going to definitely be seeing more of her on the YouTube channel. And yeah, for us, we're going to be continuing to work together.
Hope you liked it.
Yes. And if you have anything you want to share, any comments, just comment them below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. If you have, thank you very much, beautiful souls, for always coming along. And a quick announcement for everyone is that we currently have a summer sale for our birth chart readings. So you can check that out on my website as well. So grab them before the summer sale ends. All right. That's it. Have a beautiful day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.